Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them, and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
Oh my gosh.
What? Oh, are there
Can you
children
hear?
banging?
It's been a really long day. We've had a lot of excitement because it's Labor Day today. And so everybody's just a little tired and grumpy and slapping each
And
other.
I kind of feel that.
Do you want somebody to slap you, Mel?
I think the whole world needs to be slapped, including me.
Snap out of it, kind of a slap?
I don't even know anymore.
Yeah.
I had to get rescued yesterday for mental health reasons from some extenuating circumstances in my personal life when somebody's being a jerk to me and I can't manage it. And then as I'm just trying to like build myself up, then a family member had to go into the hospital for an actual trigger warning for a suicide attempt. So my family is in trauma right now. And I'm in personal trauma, and I am not at my house, but I am at someone else's house, and they are making sure I'm
Mel.
okay. What?
Please look behind you. There are the creepiest dolls on a shelf behind you.
I got rescued to a place that has creepy dolls. No, I am not in the asylum.
This... I hope this place is helping you and not making you more traumatized.
Well,
I think it's good.
I'm in the toy room where children play, and there are so many costumes. I could be whatever princess or monster I want.
Yeah. Well, I am hopeful that getting you out of your normal scene will help you a little bit. Maybe breaks through some of those cyclical thoughts too. So, fingers crossed to that. And, I just feel like it's been a long struggle for you and you keep getting knocked down. So that's not really fair.
I know. January 1st, my dad died. Then the person I was dating abandoned me and said he would not. And now is poisonous and not very nice.
Yeah. That might be news to people that you're dating.
I know. Well, because I wasn't sure what was happening. And then all this stuff happened. And anyway, yeah, I haven't talked about it. And then now apparently he's with this other person, and interesting timing, but has been saying not nice things to me, so he is now blocked. And
Good.
You know what, whatever makes him feel better.
Whatever makes you feel better.
No, I'm just saying, like, the way that he has treated me, I think it's a way of making himself feel better for being an a-hole.
I see.
And so that's been enough personal trauma for me on top of, like, already opening up myself after a dead husband. That didn't go well. And then this, so anything on top of that is kind of too hard. And then this stuff is, like, life and death hard. So I'm tired, guys. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Speaking of dating, we have one of our members who reached out to us and would like to hold some Zoom calls with a little bit more specific topics. And so our friend David is going to be having a Zoom call with the specific topic of talking about some of the challenges of dating after widowhood. And that's going to be taking place on September 17th at noon. Is that noon our time?
Yeah, our time.
Okay, so it's going to be at noon Mountain Time. So maybe if you're in a position where you want to start dating, don't listen to Mel's terror and horror story, but maybe do too. And if you want to be able to just chat about some of the difficulties, then you guys can hop on there and he'll be leading that discussion. So thanks, David, for doing that. I think a lot of our people will be interested in hopping on there and trying to discuss some of those things.
Yeah, and we also have the regular Zoom calls this coming Saturday, September 10th. 2 of them. One is at noon Mountain Time and the other's at 6 Mountain Time. And David's going to be in one of those 2, I know, he said. So you can ask some questions if you would like when he's there to kind of get a feel for what the one on the 17th will be like. But I know that there's a variety of times out from the death of people that join the Zoom hangs, and some of them maybe a little bit further out. And so don't want to hijack the time for those who are newer, more newly widowed. Right. So yeah, that's the whole purpose behind it. So thank you, David, for that. And thanks to Autumn Barker, who's going to be heading up both of the ones on Saturday. And again, that's at 12 Mountain Time and 6 Mountain Time. You can find the links in our app, Widow We Do Now, or in the events tab in the Facebook group. But let's go back a little bit, Anita. Can we talk about you? We kind of just bombed into me.
Sure, we can talk about me. Something happened today that was an interesting occurrence, and I don't know what to make of it yet because it just barely happened. But this morning I did a triathlon, and I have been wearing my wedding ring still, and it's not my real wedding ring. It's like a silicone wedding ring, but I have worn it after Jason died, and while I was swimming in the pool, it came off, and it was a race situation, so I didn't stop to find it. I never would have found it anyway because it's white and the bottom of the pool is white. Anyway, and so my ring got taken from my hand, and so this is the first time that I have been ringless. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if I'll get a replacement to put it back on, or if I'll leave it off. It feels really wrong. I've noticed today how often I fiddle with it because I've tried to fiddle with it and it's not there. So yeah, we shall see.
By the way, Anita won her age category.
I sort of won. Yeah. I don't want to talk about it now.
Okay, never mind.
I'm kind of mad about it.
Anita's the worst. It's the worst that she won her age category.
I really took 3rd place.
That's
overall,
amazing. I mean, sorry that you suck. Which one of those helped you the most?
Both. They're both great. I won a hard hat, so now I have a hard hat to go with my anvil and sledgehammer and 2 rubber mallets.
I love the weird prizes that you get.
Yeah, this race in particular, because it's Labor Day today, they give out things like, I've gotten a lunch box from them before, like all things that go with like job site, quote unquote, is kind of the idea, I think. So yeah, I honestly can't even remember what happened last week. So that's all I got for you. I'm sure it was chaotic and crazy, and I wanted to hide under the bed a lot and eat chocolate, which I actually found my 5-year-old doing one day. He found my stash of Australian chocolate, you guys. So I had to hide it again.
No, he did. Okay, Liz, we're counting on you.
I'm gonna need a fill up. By the way, speaking of Australia, I'm doing a lot of that today. Speaking of, it was Father's Day for our Australian friends this weekend. So sending you guys love. That can be a really hard day, a really hard weekend with lots of reminders. So our hugs to you across the ocean.
Yes. I have something to say now.
Say it.
Okay. So, in my attempt to keep my brain not scary, I have been... Well, you already know this. Everybody knows
they don't,
this.
though.
They do.
Oh, okay.
Because I just remembered I've talked about it. I have to exercise and keep things up every day or I collapse in the head. And so that started when we got to Australia on August 4th. So I'm proud to say I've exercised every day except for the day that we flew back and lost time. And so this morning while I was exercising, I also like to listen to things that are helpful while I'm exercising. And there was an interesting podcast that I listened to today. It's actually one of Oprah's, her Super Soul whatevers. And they were talking about emotions and how hard they are. And I appreciated this because they started talking about how when people are going through hard things, they talk about mindfulness helping a lot. And it does, because mindfulness connects you with your breath. It connects you with your body and kind of gets you back to baseline. That's the whole point of it, so that you don't ruminate in the past and become too depressed or fixate on the future, which has not happened yet, and become anxious. And I know that as widows, we deal with all of it. And we also have a lot of trauma on top of that. So that's another thing. But getting back to baseline and just breathing is helpful. But one thing that you'll see in books or listening to people, they'll say, welcome the emotions. And in the podcast that I listened to today, they actually addressed that phrase. And it kind of helped me a little bit because I'm going through all this crap, right? And I'm just I am too raw to welcome anger and welcome betrayal and welcome hurt. I already am hurt by them enough. I don't want to welcome them hey, come on, let's hang out and be friends. And so in what they were saying today, they were saying maybe change the word out to just acknowledge. And I'm I can do that. Right now, I'm not in a place where I can welcome it. Who wants to welcome those things? It makes it sound like you agree with it and you wanted it. You want those things around. And I get what they're saying, because it's the whole point is that you learn how to sit with the emotions. So if any of you are struggling with things like this, with feelings, the resistance to the feeling causes even more pain. I'm mad that I'm even having feelings. And so that's probably prolonging me having feelings, right? But if I can acknowledge them, I think that's step one before welcoming them and inviting them in.
The thought that came into my head was there's a difference, and it's a paradox. Everything's a paradox. Ask my sister, but she is obsessed with paradoxes. But it's not necessarily welcoming it like you want it to be there, but it's also not pushing it away and trying to keep it from being there either, because you really can't keep it from being there. It's going to be there one way or the other. So it's not you're yay, but also not no, you cannot be here with me.
Yeah. Something about the word welcome just wasn't, I'm not in a place for that yet. Maybe in a week, I don't know. But yeah, so sometimes I think when we're so raw, we need to hear things with certain lingo. I don't know. So anyway, for all of you who are dealing with that, I'm with you. High five. Also, thumbs down. Stupid. But we're here.
Oh, yeah.
You guys. I'm only 40 and I've lived 12 lives.
It's like a cat and a half.
I am a cat and a half, not a cat in the hat. Oh, but I just ordered my ski pass. So if anybody has an Icon pass anywhere in the world, I can ski with you. Hit me up.
Anywhere in the world?
Well,
Wow.
That's an Icon. Yeah, it's a whole corporation dumb thing.
That's cool. Mel, can I tell them the story about roller skating? So we went roller skating this week. We've kind of formed this little posse, And we were at a church parking lot, and a police officer drove into the parking lot, and Mel and I were like, jig's up. They're going to tell us we can't skate here, even though, like, we're not jumping off of anything or being, crazy like the skateboarders or rollerbladers or whatever. The police officer, female police officer, rolls down our window. We're like, hey. She says, have you guys seen a horse? And we're like, excuse me? Like, without a person? And she's like, I don't know. They just told me I'm looking for a horse. What am I supposed to do if I find a horse? It was so funny because it was not what I was expecting at all.
I asked her if she wanted to roller skate with us, and she didn't. But she was just annoyed because she's like, I can't even fit people in the back of my car. How am I going to fit a horse in my car?
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts, and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor. That was our suggestion to put the horse in the car. She was not super amused.
Well, I think she should have tied it to the hitch.
Yeah, I think that if she found it, she just should like point at it and be like, I found it. And now what do you want me to do? Anyway, it was super funny. And then we had a fine time roller skating. But that was our funny, have you guys seen a horse story?
I was thinking we're going to get busted for roller skating.
I did too. Thought she was going to be like, you can't be here. It's private property, blah, blah, blah. Nope. She was just looking for a horse on the loose.
And if anybody lost a horse, it would be Anita's grandpa. But it wasn't this time.
It wasn't. It wasn't his horses. My grandpa's 92. He has 2 horses. He can't ride them anymore because his horses are too old. Not him.
Oh, the horses.
The horses.
So definitely one of those horses was not on the loose.
No, because that's a whole other. One of them's blind and the other one is got a bad hoof or something. I don't know anything about horses. You guys loved our Patreon shout out last week, but we did have some people who were a little bit sad that the 5-year-old didn't say your name. So we invited him back, and he has recorded everybody's names in our Patreon shout out, so you don't feel bad.
Yep, we hope that this has rectified the situation for you. And if you are a new listener as of today and don't know what Patreon is, please consider joining. It helps the podcast to keep going. It's patreon.com/WWDN, and you get certain perks at certain levels, and the tiers start at $5 a month. And at $10 a month and up, you get a shout out in episode as well as ad-free episodes and more.
If you don't want to join our Patreon but still want to support the podcast, there's 2 other ways you can do that. One is buying us tacos at buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonoww. And yes, we actually go eat tacos while we talk about podcast planning. The other thing that's super easy is you can just go to iTunes or Spotify and give us a nice rating and review. It really helps when people are looking for a widow-specific podcast. If we've got lots of reviews, it pops up for them, and then we're able to help them as well. So 2 other ways you can help, and then we'll do our Patreon shout-out right now.
Here we are.
Well, guys, back by popular demand, we have a helper for our Patreon shout-out today. Are you ready to do this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
First, we're going to shout out our secret patrons. Do you know any songs you want to sing?
No.
You don't know any songs?
No.
Okay. How about we do Widow Man burning out the fuse up there alone?
Is that a real song?
No, it's not. Okay, come back here.
Constance Stallback, David Kelly, Don Satterite, Emily Wesenberg, Gail Bell, Ivan Meisner, Cat, Krista Waite, Maya Glasser, Neil Hooper, Sam Finlayson, Amber, Alanis, Vela, Amy Hartman Martell, Amy Neal, Ashley Hahn, Barbara Schneeberger, Brandy Younger, Brittany Pedro, Stefan, Cindy Wilkerson, Daniel Catterberg, Deborah, not a Debbie Downer, Des Brazo, Jean Marie Massey, Jenny Taylor, Jennifer Beal, Jennifer Brown, Jenny Lang, Jesse Johnson, Carol Schultz, Kelly Ford, Judy Malkin, Kirsten Stromberg Cluston, Laura Egerty Penner, Lauren Old, Lou Clausen, Auntie Marie Hoffman, Mary Catherine Anderson, Patricia Weiss, Rachel Barbosa, Sarah Morris, Simone Fu, Sunshine Haven, Sylvia Shore, Tula Schneider, Karen Cornetto.
And she's going to adopt you, and you get to go live with her.
Wait, why?
Because she just thinks you're so cool.
But how is she going to adopt me?
We're going to figure that out later.
Amy B.
Welcome.
Welcome, Andredden. Anna Tracy. Christina Scambato. Who the heck are you? Christine Anderson. Cindy Raynaud. Connie Ramett. Dawn Barber. Debbie Fells. Deborah Westwood. Diana Becker. Emily Toledo. Eric Mullen. Gabe Lozano. Giovannoid. Gina Hawes. Ann Steeny. Eliana Bell. Jackie Coyle. Jane. Jennifer Davis. Jenny Armstrong. Jenny Barrow. Jocelyn Meyer. Julie Stevenson. Karina Chabobo. Jagobo. Kathy Murray. Katie Getz. Katie Ratcliffe. Kara Mascara. Kevin Ferry. Chris Morgan. Laura Keeley. Lindsay Kanopka. Lori Farrington. Marjorie Lewis. Marianne Hammond. Mary McGowan. Megan Montague. Melissa Bowers. Melissa Hancock. Missy Schubert. Naomi Brown. Pierre Gavina. Rebecca Olamacher. Becky Zeba. Robin Flam. Stacy Stewart. Tammy Terabest. Tara Wallace. Trenton Thompson. Valerian Rootpacker. Finally, Labor Day. Sil Wendy. Thank you to all our patrons for helping the podcast and being our patrons. Thank you, patrons, for keeping the podcast going.
All right, you can go play now.
Okay. You're the best, Mom.
Okay, bye.
I'm your helper, remember.
I do. Let's do this. I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
We are two young widows, and we're just trying to help everybody figure out widow.
We
do
now.
Well, Mel, here we are again.
Yeah.
With an exciting new installation of the Widow We Do Now podcast.
Wow. Great. I'm here for it.
I almost forgot to come today, so good job me for remembering.
Are you serious?
Yes.
But this guest today is here, and she has a lot of names, and we've already had a lot of fun times before we hit record joking about said names, but nobody's going to understand any of that, so it doesn't matter. So, Anita, I'm going to let you introduce our guest.
This is Ashley Olivia Nelson. Hi, Ashley. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. And thank you for naming like my whole government because it can be confusing.
I love it. Ashley, where are you recording from?
I am recording from Long Island, New York, not New York, New York. I always tell people there's other places other than Times Square. So yes, I am Long Island, New York.
You are from Long Island, Teresa Caputo, Long Island Mediumville.
There you go.
There you go.
So are you a native of Long Island, New York?
I am born and raised, and I've lived other places in between, but I seem to be pulled back to this area still. I love the beach. I grew up 15 minutes from the beach. So other places that I've lived have not been so generous and allowing me to be so close. So I'm like, I think I'm going to return for a little. So, yes.
Mel talks about that too. She's like, it's like a rubber band. I keep getting pulled back to where I came from.
Yeah. I had a divorce and then I came back and then I was like a dead husband and then I came back. I'm like, okay, I'm here, whatever. So, Ashley, what do you do for work?
Right. So by trade, I am a writer. I have been doing it essentially like literally all my life. One of my first jobs was actually writing. I've done everything from writing for magazines to helping edit books. It was really cool. I got to write for the guy who actually designs the awards for the Grammys for one time. So I'm a TEDx speaker, some really fun stuff. But yeah, by trade, I am a writer. And the past several years, even before I became a widow, I was writing in the medical field, so working with a lot of doctors and nurses and psychologists and even like endodontists and people who do like root canals and all that great stuff. And so I learned a lot about mental health and just health in general. And it would seem like a natural segue to come into grief and start helping people.
So did you learn a lot about like tooth pulp in your writing with those endodontists and...
Yeah, it was really interesting. I felt like I joke because I know that, dentists, they are well respected, but I feel like I kind of got a dentistry degree without even really trying because I read and wrote and co-wrote and helped so many different stuff. I was just like, oh, okay, I know a lot about teeth.
So if I ever need some cut rate dental work, I know where I'm coming.
Yeah,
coming to Long Island, New York.
Long Island, New York. Right.
Yeah,
that might be
absolutely.
Olivia Nelson who does it, just in case there's like a malpractice issue.
There you go. It's not you.
It's going to be under the table, guys. Like literally will be under the table. And she will have, it's going to be fine.
It's going to be the widow discount. It's all good. So Ashley, you mentioned it already. You're a widow. Boo. But you have a unique story, so we would love to hear it. Will you take us back to before you were a widow at all? What was your life like?
Sure. I like to say that my life was very happy-go-lucky, and the fact that it wasn't perfect, but I was like all like smiles and frills and everything wonderful. When you think of that person, there was like, oh, there's always a bright side. That was me. A lot of people thought about like, hey, if there's something go wrong or if you feel having a really down day and you just need somebody to give you an uplift and encourage you, go to Ashley. Like she can help you out. And it was the same way even when, I had met Jason. It was very happy-go-lucky. I could definitely sit with people in sadness, but it was just, like I said, very happy, very positive, very outgoing, talking to other people. And then life hit.
Yes. Let's talk about that. How old were you when you met Jason?
So I was in my early 20s. I say that we kind of met accidentally on purpose, and that I was a writer and he was a writer. And we were both in church at the time. And people kept on telling me, there was like, oh, there's this guy who does spoken word. And I really think that you guys should like meet him. Sometimes he does it, in services. Sometimes he does like completely non-religious spoken word. And I think you two should like definitely meet. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then I would just never meet him. Like I was like, who is this mystery man? And then long story short, I decided like, the whole church thing wasn't necessarily for me at the moment. So I was about to leave, and like literally like the last day, I was like, this is my last day here. I ended up accidentally on purpose bumping into him, and we got into conversation and we started talking about a lot of stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, I know who you are. You're like the girl who does all the writing and you've done spoken words and stuff before. And I was like, oh, you know me? He goes, well, yeah, people talk about you and I've come to some of your things. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, kind of weird, but all right. So now he knows like all this information about me. So I'm like, okay, so who are you? Like, what do you like to do? And he goes, oh yeah, I do spoken word. I've done here and there. I was like, wait, you're the guy that people have been telling me about for years. They always say that we should meet and like write a poem together and do stuff. And so actually our few times hanging out was because we were supposed to write a poem. Long story short, we actually never ended writing the poem, but we ended up having a great relationship from it. So it's still one.
I'm a little disappointed that no poem came out.
I know. I think about it and I'm just like, that was like the whole purpose of it, right?
Yeah.
So you met, and then did you connect kind of immediately and start dating and begin a life together, or did it take a little while? Was it a slow burn?
Yeah, it was a slow burn. It was, I would say, like a few months actually, because like I said, in the beginning, we crossed paths and then we kind of didn't cross paths because I had left the place where we had met and kind of was doing my own thing. And we would get together and say, yeah, we're going to write a poem. And it always started with like, okay, well, who's going to start? And I was like, okay, well, you start the poem off and then I'll finish it. And it was like, no, well, I kind of don't really want to like starting the poem. You should start it. And we just never agreed on who was going to actually start, which is funny. And so it was like a slow burn. And then actually with us hanging out, we went to poetry readings. He came to my stuff. I went to his stuff. And we were like, I think there's something more here. And I think that we've been hanging out, but we're really getting to know each other. I've met your parents, you've met my parents. I know your friends, you've met my friends at this point. And so eventually we're like, I think this is it. And we decided to actually make it official.
So did you get engaged or just boyfriend, girlfriend?
Right. So for this relationship, we were actually just boyfriend and girlfriend.
Oh, okay. When you said official, I was like, did that mean that or just like we're boyfriend, girlfriend?
I know, it's like, are you official or just like official?
Yeah.
So if I
nobody knows what the word official means. So.
what does that mean? So yeah, because we were friends, I would say for the first few months, like I said, on our request of trying to just go to different poetry events and trying to figure out what type of miraculous poem that we were going to write that of course we never wrote. We just became really good friends. And so by official, I mean, we actually decided to like, yeah, we're going to be in a relationship. We're going to be date and be boyfriend and girlfriend.
Oh,
exclusivity.
Of course.
So tell us a little bit about what happened after you became boyfriend or girlfriend. Obviously, we know that things did not go how you planned.
Right. So we ended up having, I would say, a really amazing relationship. I always say that no relationship is perfect. Sometimes you just want to throw like the nearest object at the person and be like, goodbye. But as far as perfect goes, it was really perfect. We were super close. I had Sunday dinners with his family all the time. He ends up meeting like my whole family down to like my nieces and my nephews, and we would hang out on the weekends. The beach was our favorite place, so we would go there often. We would travel, and yeah, it was just a really nice and great strong relationship. We had a lot of common interests in that he was really artistic, I was really artistic, so a lot of our hobbies kind of meshed together. A lot of our friend circles already knew each other because like I said, everybody was telling us about each other. So when we actually finally started to date, everybody was like, oh, we can be one happy family because I'm friends with him, I'm friends with you. And so it all came together. So it was really nice that it went that way.
And then what happened?
And then
dun dun dun.
And then it happened. So it's really bizarre. I never forget. I never forget, he died on a Thursday. I was supposed to see him that Wednesday. I was supposed to go to my yoga class and he was actually supposed to come and he wasn't feeling well. He's like, oh, I don't think I'm going to go to the yoga class because I was trying to convince him to come to the class. He actually went one time and I was a yoga fanatic. I would go like 3-4 times a week, sometimes more. And he was like, what's this yoga thing? And I was like, well, I said, you rest, whatever. I'm going to go to yoga. I'll see you tomorrow, which is Thursday. So I'm driving to work on Thursday, and literally at 8:25 every morning he would call me. It seems like a really weird time. I had to be work at 8:30, and I would always tell him that my morning drive was like my morning woosah. So my morning woosah was basically just my moment to myself. I would play music, just kind of like unwind before the day started. And so he was like, all right, well, I'll call you 5 minutes before so I don't interrupt the famous woosah. And this way we can actually talk. And for some reason, whatever reason that morning, I ended up getting there a little bit earlier. And so when he had actually called, I was like in the middle of what already felt like an early work day. And so it was already starting. And I was like, maybe I should call him. Maybe I shouldn't call him back. Maybe I should call him back. Maybe I shouldn't call him back. And then the phones were ringing and everybody was asking me questions. I had a deadline to meet. I said, you know what? I'll just reach out to him on his lunch break. So fast forward, his lunch comes and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I kind of still don't feel all that great, but I think I might go to the urgent care across the street. And I think, we'll kind of, just play the day out to see how it goes. And I was like, all right, well, text me to make sure everything is okay and whole 9 yards. He said, all right. And I never forget the last text that he sent me was, hey, I'm going to get a smoothie. And I was like, okay, he's doing really well. I don't have to call him back. If he's going to get a smoothie, he's having a really great day. And I got off of work and he had taken the train in. So I was like, maybe I should drive to his job and like pick him up. And for some reason, I kept having like this unction to go home, even though I really wanted to go see him. And I kept saying, maybe I should go pick him up. Maybe I should go home. Maybe I should pick him up. Maybe I should go home. And I went home, adjusted into the day, and, in the evening, fell asleep, didn't wake up until the next morning. So now it's Thursday morning. And I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, Jason, I didn't check on and see if he was feeling okay. And I ended up calling him and it went straight to voicemail. I promise you not, I do not know why. It went straight to voicemail and I said, he's dead. And it was weird. And I was just like, come on, Ashley, like, seriously, he doesn't pick up the phone. You're like, oh my boyfriend died. Like, like it's kind of like a meme type of a situation. And I was like, no, I think he's dead. And I remember I called his mom and she didn't pick up. And then I texted her and I was like, hey, he said he wasn't feeling well yesterday. I didn't hear from him earlier today. And I was like, let me just get ready for my work day. Got ready for my work day and, grabbing my purse and everything. And that's when I ended up getting a phone call from his mom saying that the police had came to her overnight and he had passed out at work and he was in the back room when they found him. So about time they actually discovered that he had passed out, he was already gone. And it's like the whole world shattered. It was like, how does that even happen? How you were just here, you just texted me, you were literally just getting a smoothie. Like, what happened? And it was just like a big, like I said, big shock, and the whole world just started crumbling really, really quickly.
And how old was he at this time?
So how old was I? I was 24 at the time and he was 27. So yeah, we were like super young.
And what year was it?
This was 2017.
Okay.
You're not supposed to, this is not supposed to be one of your life experiences when you're 24, guys.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. How did you react to this? Were you just stunned or were you in denial? Did you accept it immediately? Like, what happened?
Yeah, it was a mix of everything. I never forget because actually his mom called and she actually called my father 3:00 in the morning when she found out. And at the time when I had spoke to my dad the next morning rather, I was like, oh, his mom said that she had called you when she first found out he died. And he goes, yeah, I wasn't sure if I should like wake you up or if I should have let you know. And he said, I thought about it. And I said, this is probably going to be your last good night of sleep for a while. I'll just wait till the morning. And it just happened that I got in contact with his mom before my father actually had told me. And Jason's mom had said, well, yeah, I called your dad because she's like, I didn't want you to be by yourself. I wanted you to be with someone when you found out the news. And she said, I called so early also because she said, the last thing I wanted you to do is go on social media and be like, wow, okay, I found out at 24 years old that my boyfriend died. But she said, that's like a shock on top of a shock. But I never forget when she had told me, she was like, sweetie, I found out and the police called and they found him at work and the whole story that she told me. And she said, Jason died. And honestly, it's like the whole world went black. It's like all I heard was Jason died, 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 like over and over and over and over again. And it took a minute for me to kind of come into myself. And it was weird because it was like, here I am, like breaking down and crying, and she's crying. And she was pretty much a second mom to me. And so it was like we were supporting each other in that moment. I'm like, oh my gosh, my boyfriend died, but dang, like her child died, but it's just two grieving women on the phone. And I know my first reaction, I was like, this can't be real. This can't be possible. And so even after I hung up with the phone, I said, you know what? I'm just going to go into work extremely late. And I was driving on the way to my job and I received a random phone call and I decided to pick up. And the woman on the other end happened to be his manager. And she said that it was a really, I never forget, she goes, yeah, I'm calling, I'm looking for Ashley. And, Jason passed away. I'm sure that you know by now, which I'm thinking, what if I didn't know by now? But when she had said that, and she goes, I'm really looking to get in contact with his family. Can I call his family? And I thought, absolutely. Of course you can call his family. I said, I'm driving right now. I'm on my way to work, but you can definitely call them. And she goes, well, can you give me the phone number? And I said, the phone number? She goes, yeah, can you give me like his mom or his dad or somebody closest kin phone number? And I said, well, it should probably be on the piece of paper that, he filled out. Because now I'm kind of annoyed while trying to process that I just found out maybe an hour ago that Jason died. And she goes, well, I went through all the paperwork and all his HR stuff and all his onboarding. And for his emergency contact, he only listed you.
Aw.
And it was just like a really bittersweet moment. I was like, oh, it was one of those moments where it's like, I remember saying to myself, I was like, we're not engaged, we weren't married, or, but he thought so highly of me that if anything had happened, I was going to be the first of contact. Now, granted, the police naturally, just by order, they went to next of kin, which was his parents, but I was who she had access to. I was his point of contact. So first person
He was
to
your
alert.
person.
Yeah. And it was very sweet.
So I'm curious, Ashley, the relationship of boyfriend, girlfriend,
Mm-hmm.
and husband and wife is a little bit different. So when the funeral planning and things like that were happening, how involved were you, and how much did his parents take on to do? I mean, sometimes that piece of paper gives you a lot of deference as far as, I know what he wants or what he wanted, and I get to be in charge. You're kind of sometimes might take a back seat, whether or not that's how it should happen or shouldn't happen. That's sometimes how it does happen. So how did it go for you?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I was really blessed, and I say tremendously blessed, in that he had amazing parents and I was extremely close to them. My story from when speaking to a lot of unmarried widows is not mine. And that when Jason did die, his mom said, he died on a Thursday. His parents live roughly an hour and a half away from us. And so she said, okay, this Saturday we were all going to meet up and we're just going to talk and sit, or not talk, and we're going to sit. And we got together and we did, and we cried, and, we expressed condolences and we hugged. And she said, we have to plan the funeral now. And before any planning, his mom turned to me and she said, okay, we already know that he wanted to be cremated. She goes, do you know any other information? And she asked me like what songs I wanted to be played at his celebration service. She made sure when she spoke to the person giving the eulogy that I was present. Anything that was picked out, I was there. When she was picking out little mementos of what his ashes would be dispersed into to friends and family, she involved me. So, and I was just really touched by that, because I wasn't his wife, but I felt like I was, the way that she had included me.
Good job, Jason's mom.
Yeah, she was phenomenal. I always say that she's really phenomenal. I even remember it was probably like a week or so after he died, and I was like, he used to say I love you every day, and I said, who's gonna say I love you to me every day? And she said, I will. And literally, I promise you not. So it was probably, I want to say a year after. No, a few years after. I want to say at least 4 years went by, and she would text me almost every single day faithfully, and like, hey, just thinking about you, just letting you know that you're loved. Hey, just thinking about you.
Oh,
Just like saying I love you. So it was really nice that she included me. But again, that's not typical. And the challenge of that is, I remember when I was trying to find grief support for unmarried widows, or just widows in general, some of the grief supports was like, hey, you have to have an obituary with your name in it, or supply a death certificate. And I was like, well, I'm not listed on those things, so where do I find support? But yeah, for sure, it's definitely a different process, like you said.
On top of that, I'm curious about if you identified as a widow immediately. We hear from people all the time that they feel like they're imposters. And we're always trying to tell people that they're not imposters. But did you identify with the word widow? Or what word did you identify with?
Right. That's a great question. It took me a really long time to say that I was a widow, because I remember when he died and when I came to some senses, which was not that much, by the way, I was like, okay, so how do I find support, or how do I find people? How do I find anyone like me? And so what do we do nowadays? We go to Google. And I said, okay, grieving girlfriends. Nope. Grieving boyfriends. Nope. Grieving fiancés. Nope. Like, I couldn't find anything, and I just didn't know what I was. I was like, okay, so I'm not a wife. We weren't engaged. He was my boyfriend. I don't know what I am. I even remember when it was time for his funeral and I had to take off. I went to the job, and I was working for a medical office, mind you. And I was there for like 5-6 years. And I remember going into the bereavement policy, and it said, okay, you get, 3 days. And if you had to travel, you get an extra day. And then it said for your mother, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, I had everything, wife, husband. And I said, there's nothing here for boyfriend. And I remember just my whole world sinking. And I was just like, so does that mean that I don't get bereavement days? And, I went to the manager at that time, and they were like, oh, I didn't really consider that when we wrote it up. But they were kind, and they allowed me to take the 3 days. But yeah, I didn't know what to call myself for a long time.
So they didn't even have the word partner in there. Like, you'd think that would just be a generic word that they could put in there.
Mm-hmm.
And also, can we just say 3 days? I mean, wow. That's so much time. Like, if your partner dies, that's all you need is 3 days, and then you're back to normal and everything's just fine. So, perfect.
Yeah. So unrealistic. I'm like, 3 days. I'm like, what is 3 days supposed to do? When you think of when you think of all the time that it just takes to plan a funeral, and then all the paperwork, and then just the grief on top of it, you're like, 3 days is like 2 seconds.
So Ashley, were you able to find support at all since you Googled and you didn't find things?
Yeah, so I was not. It was not successful. And back in 2017 was not like 2022, which we're currently in. People were not talking about grief. There wasn't really that many Instagram accounts, or there wasn't any really websites and stuff for grief in general that seemed more quote unquote mainstream. And I wasn't able to find support. I got really lucky that shortly after Jason died, we were planning to move to North Carolina. And when I moved there, I ended up finding another woman who was roughly around the same age as I, give or take about 5-10 years. And she was what we called each other grieving girlfriends. And she was my support system, and I was hers.
So Mel and I know that your story is even less simple than what you've just talked about. So you're 24.
Right.
You're a grieving girlfriend / widow, and you have to figure out what your life is going to be. So tell us what happened in the aftermath of his death and how you found yourself rebuilding your life.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure what things were supposed to look like. There was no roadmap, as we all know in grief. The one really challenging thing, and I say this very generally because there's no blanket answer for grief, but what I can say, the one thing that made it seem a lot harder at 24 is that a lot of your peers have no clue what it's like to lose someone. And in addition to that, some of them haven't even got, in deep relationships. Some of them, they're like, oh, you were dating someone? Yeah, I kind of like someone, but maybe not. I'm not really sure. And so a few people wanted to say, hey, it's like a breakup. And I'm like, no, breaking up is a lot different than the person dying. And so even when I spoke to people who were in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s, it wasn't a lot of support there. What I ended up finding out that when I spoke to women who were more like my grandmother's age, my grandma was a widow, and speaking to her actually gave me some comfort. And it was helpful to see, like, yeah, you can rebuild your life, or just take it one moment at a time. Because everybody was just like, oh, you're 24. That means you got a whole lot of time ahead of you. You can find someone else. And I'm like, getting a new relationship doesn't replace somebody who died. It's a new relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I was 35 when my husband died. Anita was, how old were you? 38?
38, yeah.
And people would say those things to us. And being 24, it's like, that's when usually people have maybe just graduated college. And you know what I mean? And we already had people saying stuff to that, and we were super mad. We're like, shut up. What are you talking about? Being 24 and having all that thrown at you? Man, so did you ever say stuff back to them and correct them? Or did you kind of just keep your energy to yourself and ignore them and move on from them?
So initially, when people gave me a lot of bad advice, like, hey, at least you didn't have kids, as one doctor told me, or hey, you can find someone else, or hey, at least you guys weren't together for a long time, those things. Yeah, you see
well,
me.
All those things were said to me too. Exactly. We were married almost 2 years, and I was like, thanks for making me invalid. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. And because I didn't know that we weren't together for a long time, even though that was the plan. So I like to say the early grief, actually, so to speak, was more silent about things. I wouldn't say more until closer to the year of his anniversary of his death. When people said things, I would say, hey, that's not helpful. Or, just because he died doesn't mean that I don't still miss him. And I just wasn't really heard. I don't think that, I think I just didn't articulate it as well as I can now. And also, again, when you're just 24, people just feel like the whole world is ahead of you. And it may be true in some form, but doesn't mean that the grief is any lighter.
Yeah, I mean, because you can think of, I'm 24. Let's say I live to be 84. I have 60 years knowing that I'm going to be without Jason. So that's a big burden. So Ashley, what happens next in your story? You're a grieving girlfriend. You're learning stuff about grief. That's not fun, but we all go through it. What's next?
So, right, I want to say about 6 to 8 weeks roughly before Jason died, we were actually planning to relocate. As I had mentioned, I decided to go forward with our plan because everything was already in place as far as the jobs and where to live. And I decided that I was going to relocate to North Carolina, as we said that we were. And it seemed like it was going to be helpful because it was a fresh new start. I would meet people, and it was nicer weather because New York weather is kind of crappy most of the time, lots of times. Okay, mostly. And it was just kind of nice to be there. And I had a job, like I said, already in place. And literally 2 weeks after I started that job, and I remember the date because it was Jason's birthday, they were like, oh, we made a hiring error and
what?
We can't keep you.
What? You just relocated. Are you kidding me?
Literally.
We're sitting here, our mouths are open.
Literally.
That's why we're not talking. Everybody listening. Okay. So, do you feel like
it's fine? Everything's fine. The
Everything's
world
fine.
is
We're
fine.
okay.
When widowhood happens,
help.
then everything just falls apart. It's just like par for the course. Like, of course that happened.
Of course that happened. And of course it happened on his birthday. And I just remember being really infuriated. It said a hiring error. I remember when I got the job, literally I got the job a week after Jason died is when they confirmed it. And so he died February 24. So you figure I got the job roughly the end of February, beginning of March. And I didn't start working at the job until April. So it's like, you guys knew that I was going to relocate. You had roughly a month to get this all together. I had actually rescheduled one of the interviews because I told them that Jason had died. And then I said, you wait 2 weeks on the job to be like, hey, by the way, we have to get rid of you? that conversation did not go well. I was so angry, so frustrated. And I was like, great. So strike one, I was like, Jason dies. Strike two, now my job's gone. And I was just heartbroken all over.
Yeah. Did you stay? Did you move back?
What did you do?
Yeah, so I ended up staying, living there for roughly a year. I decided, like, hey, what the heck? I'm here. Again, I kind of tapped into my more bright-sided self prior to the loss, and I was just like, well, at least I don't have to grieve and go to work.
Good point.
Which is, it also has its downsides, because you're like, okay, what do I do from a financial standpoint? But I knew I would be okay for a few months. And I just kind of took time to grieve. I was like, I'm going to try to wake up when I wake up. And if I don't sleep until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because I can't sleep because, again, grief. It gave me some time to just take life slow and to think. And I spent a lot of the time just writing about grief. One, because I'm a writer, but two, is a way for me to cope and to often reflect on my process throughout the months.
It's not
rude.
cool.
All of this is
Yeah.
Disrespectful.
So you've been a widow for a year, basically, right? So that means that we would be at
Right.
2018 in the timeline. Okay.
Correct.
So what did 2019, 2020 bring for you?
Great. So the second year of grief sucked by a landslide. When I was approaching year 3, Michael had reached out to me. And when I say reached out, we had been friends for probably nearly a decade. And it was weird because I want to say roughly.
Wait, who's Michael?
Oh, let's go back. Let's go back.
Yeah, back up a sec.
She said, back up a second. So Michael ended up being my second partner. He was the person after Jason. And so
And where did you meet Michael?
So I had met him like at the start of college. And
okay.
there was it wasn't like any romantic relationship or anything. He was into design, I was into writing, and sometimes our worlds would just interconnect. And we ended up losing touch, is funny enough, like a year or so before Jason and I got together. And I want to say life would have it that shortly after Jason died, I want to say around 2018-ish, he had moved from California back to the East Coast. And he's like, hey, I'm trying to connect with people, just seeing how you're doing. And I was like, oh, yeah, I haven't heard from you in a while. And he's like, yeah, I had relocated. My job had moved me out to California. And I was like, oh, so you moved back to the East Coast. You didn't like it out there? And he goes, well, actually, my dad died and my mom just became a widow. And I thought that she needed some support. So I came to help her out. And I was like, oh, well, that's crazy. I was just like, I understand that because I became a widow. And he's like, wait, what? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, how? What? How? And so, yeah, he was grieving. I was grieving. So we weren't in contact all that much, but we did stay in touch. And then I want to say around early 2019, we decided to hang out for his birthday in January. And the conversation just kind of grew from there.
Okay. All right. So you and Michael start hanging out. What happens next?
Yeah. So I remember it was early 2019. And so Michael and I started to hang out and everything. And then we decided to engage into a relationship. And I remember when he first asked me, he was like, I would have never suspected that we would have ended up in a relationship. And I was like, yeah, me either. I didn't see this one coming. Because like I said, our friendship before was just so platonic before. And he was saying, how do you feel? Are you to get into another relationship? Are you ready? Or you're not ready? And I remember asking him, I said, can you give me a few days? And he said, a few days. And I was like, yeah, I've never done this before. I said, I'm still grieving Jason. And I guess is that I'll probably always grieve him, but I have to really check in with myself to see if I'm okay to embark something with someone new. And he said, all right, fair enough. And I took a few days to think about it, and I came back and I said, I think I'm all right. But I did say, I said, I have a huge disclaimer. I said, I still have pictures of Jason. I said, I am still connected to his family very much so. And he's still a big part of my life, even though he is dead. And I suspect that it'll probably always be this way. I don't know if it'll always be this strong, but he's not going anywhere as far as his impact on my life. And I said, there'll probably be moments where I'll be grieving a little bit harder. And I just want you to know that that's probably going to be part of our journey because it's part of my journey. And he said that he understood. And from bearing witness to his mom's process of being a widow, he said he was, all for it. And he was really great and really supportive about the whole journey.
That's such a gift. And I actually am really impressed with the amount of clarity that you had, that you were able to express that to him. Because I think a lot of us kind of feel that inside, but A, we're not exactly sure how to voice that. And B, we might be scared to voice it too, because it just seems like a big ask for other people. And it's kind of a very hard and fine, it's like a fine line to try and tread. So I'm impressed that you were able to articulate that and to be so clear about it at that point in time in your grief. So high five to you, and high five to Michael too. Like, wow.
Yeah, good job. Yeah, I was going to say, we noticed that our friends who have repartnered after becoming a widow, it seems like many times the person that comes into their life, it's just like they have some special understanding, or they're just the exact right fit for the situation. Because we're like, I don't know if I could date a widow, like knowing how we are. So
of course. Yeah, for sure. It is definitely not an easy journey. I even remember stressful days that would come around. I remember when, it was Jason's death anniversary, and Michael and I, we were already dating at that point. And I remember I just kind of blinked out in the fact that I didn't want to speak to anybody. I didn't want anybody to come over. I didn't want to hear from anyone. And I just remember putting my phone on silent. And I remember Michael had called me a million times, and it dawned on me. I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to be terrified. What happened to you? And I remember picking up and saying, oh, I was just kind of lost in the day. I don't really feel that great. Today's Jason's death anniversary. And he's like, yeah, I know. I was just checking on you. I wasn't necessarily expecting you to pick up. But thanks for letting me know that, you're here. And if you need anything, you can call or I'll text you. But if you don't respond, it's okay. It's really okay. I get it. And I remember when Jason's birthday came around, he was just like, hey, do you want to go out to eat? Do you want to go see a poetry event? Do you want to do something? Do you want to go hang out with his family? And I was like, wow, these are a lot of questions. And saying, yeah, I just want to be there to be able to support you. And so we definitely created our own memories. And it was nice that I didn't have to just shelve my previous grief and loss in relationship and never have to look at it again. He's really supportive and allowing me to address it. And then we go, okay, this is just grief. We can continue on with our day now.
Yeah, like Anita said, you're so insightful for going through all this stuff and being able to articulate it. So I know that just listening to you, there are some things I'm like, oh, I wish that I could articulate that now. And I'm exactly not in my 20s. So thank you for helping all of us.
I'm going to steal Ashley's words. I'm going to get it on tape recorder. And if I ever find myself in a new relationship, I'll be like, listen to this. Psh.
Yes, push the button.
Push play. I will give you credit, though. I will not plagiarize. I will make sure to credit you.
Wait, do you guys remember that old show, Ask Ashley? That was one of the Nickelodeon.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Ashley.
Yes.
We could do our own version of Ask Ashley, but it's little sound bites of you having great things to say.
It'd be the podcast on the podcast.
Exactly. I'll make us an app, guys. Don't worry. Ashley will speak for us all. So you guys started dating in 2019, and he's going through these milestones with you and riding the grief waves and being supportive. What's next for you guys after that first time period?
So it was really nice. He ended up meeting my family, ended up meeting his family, and then we kind of joked and we were like, we've known each other forever and nobody knew anybody's family. And it was just like, well, I don't know. We ended up starting a writing business together. We went on a massive road trip where we traveled from Maine all the way to Atlanta. We went to every like major city on the East Coast. We just, I don't know, create recipes. We did a whole bunch of stuff. We were really both spontaneous people. He was really creative. I was really creative. And we just was ready to, build this life together. And it was kind of like a sigh of relief. But the first few months of dating, I was anxious. Like if I didn't hear from him, I was like, oh my gosh, did he die?
Oh.
Yeah. And I remember being like flustered one day and he was like, you called me a million times. And I was like, I just want to make sure that, he's like, I'm not dead. It's okay. Like, I'm okay. He was like, next time I'll just send you a text alive. just so you know. And so once we got past that part, I think it made it a little, like I said, a little easier. I don't know if the anxiety ever goes away fully. I think you kind of settle into where you are and then you really start to live again. It's not the life that you imagined, but it's the life that's reimagined, as I like to say. And you realize that one can be as equally beautiful too.
I love that. That's so true. Okay, so what happens next? Because you have a lot of grief in your life, we know.
For sure. So
here's another dun dun
dun
dun
dun dun. And then came. And so it was, and I always say that like my life is really weird. So it works in patterns. So for instance, right, Jason, he died February 23rd and he died right before we were supposed to move. So at this point, when Michael and I were together, we were both living in New York and we decided that we were going to move to Maryland because, well, that's where he was originally from. And we thought it would be a good idea. So we ended up moving to Maryland, and roughly 2 to 3 months after we did, he ended up dying. And I was just like, maybe I should just stop moving. I'm like, what in the world? Very much like Jason, he died without reason, without cause. I remember right before we moved, he was like, I'm going to go to the doctor and get all my checkups. Just the way I make sure that everything is okay and everything is great. Not that I'm expecting anything. And I remember, just coming home one day and I was just like, why is he not picking up the phone? I was like, well, he is off today. Maybe he went to go visit his mom and see how she was doing, or maybe he fell asleep. And yeah, very much like Jason, we found him and he was already gone. He was on the floor. I'm assuming that he passed away while doing laundry, because the last text that I had gotten from him was that he was doing laundry. And when I found him, he was literally near a basket of laundry. So
Stop it.
Right. So I was thinking, okay, it wasn't like he was working out, or I don't know, he was like stressed out about something. We ask so many different questions when somebody dies, especially unexpectedly, because we're just trying to justify the loss. And I just couldn't justify it any way that I flipped it and turned it. And it was just overwhelming. I remember thinking, what? Again? How? Is this real life? Like, how?
And what year was this?
So
was this 2020?
So this was 2020. Yeah.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. So in 3 years, both of those guys.
Both of them.
Did you feel like you were cursed or something?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure it out. Like nothing made sense. I remember when the paramedics came and they were trying to resuscitate him, bring him back to life. And then after a while, I was just like, he's gone, guys. Like he's gone. And I remember the paramedics was like, yeah, it's been a really long day. And it seemed like a funky type of oxymoron, because it was like a really long day for a dead guy. Right. And I just kept on thinking, and I just remember I was in shock, and I wasn't even really crying at the moment. I just remember really being in shock. And, they have the police and everything, and they go through their procedures and they say their I'm sorry's. And I'm like, yeah, you don't get it. And I remember one of the detectives who was just on the scene, and he was saying, no, I understand it's really unexpected. I said, no, you don't understand. 3 years ago, I said, I buried someone else in the same way. And then he even stopped and he was just like, I don't have any words.
Number one, I'm just curious. I've never thought that laundry might actually kill me, but now I'm starting to second guess it. Do you think it was the laundry that did it? And
it might have. It just might have been the laundry. This is like a side note, but I remember like shortly after Michael died, something like 3 months or so, 3-4 months, I bumped into a lady who was at the time we were actually like looking at homes and stuff, and I bumped into one of the realtors, and she's like, oh, hey, how are you doing? How's your husband doing? And I was like, oh, well, actually we're married yet. And she goes, oh, when you guys getting married? And I said, well, I don't really know how to tell you this. And she goes, I just remember he was just so drop dead gorgeous. And I said, that's it. I said, well, actually he dropped dead and he died. And she started laughing, and I was like, no, seriously.
No.
Like he dropped dead and he died. And then when she saw I wasn't laughing anymore, she goes, wait, what?
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, and she was
hilarious.
like, it was like really awkward, and I thought it was kind of funny. And then she was like, I don't know if to take you seriously or not, because I just saw him like 2 weeks ago and he was all right. But yeah, I don't, like I said, blame the laundry, blame like the universe. It just seems so bizarre when I was 24 and everybody was just like, oh, you'll find love again and you're young, and the universe is full of personalities and you'll find one of them and everything will work out. And I remember when Michael died and I finally announced it to everybody, I remember I was so angry. I like posted on Facebook, I put it into text messages, and I told everybody, I said, not one of you text me, it's going to work out. I said, nobody text me that you'll find love again. Nobody say, at least you didn't have kids. I said, no, like I went down like the whole laundry list. And I said, because that's what you guys said last time, and Michael's dead now. And I just remember like the whole room just went silent. Everybody's like, Ashley's pissed. Let's just like leave her alone. And yeah, it just reliving it all over again.
So you were 27.
27.
Right, when this happened?
Right.
And you had lost 2 partners within a 3-year time frame. And Michael was your first person that you even dated, right? After Jason died.
Right.
And you're really living the worst fear.
Of course.
Even though you guys had talked about it, he's like, I know that you're going to be worried that like I'm going to be dead. But it happened.
But it happened. It literally happened. Yeah. And to make matters worse, I officially hate the month of February. Michael died February 11th. Jason died February 23rd. And I was just like, maybe it's the month of February. So it was like when February comes, I'm like, nobody die. Everybody be here March 1. March 1. I expect to see all your faces and not dead ones. Yeah, it's
How do you go through this twice?
Yeah, it's really the oddest thing. I remember even just bumping into people, afterwards, and some of them were like, "Hey, how are you doing with the loss of Jason?" Or some of them would be like, "Hey, I heard that you found someone new," and I was just like, "Yeah, but we're not together." And they're like, "Oh, what happened?" And I was like, "Well, he died." And they're like, "Wait, what? He died?" They're like, do you mean to tell me that this happened again?" And I was like, "Again?" They're like, "Again?" I'm like, "Again." They're like, "What do you mean like he died? Did you mean that it just like you broke up and he's just dead to you?" I said, "Well, I kind of maybe that would be a better story, but I said he's like in the cemetery type dead. So I guess he's really gone now." And yeah, it was, I don't know. I have yet to see anything like it.
So when you compare the experience of losing Jason and the experience of losing Michael, were there things that were surprisingly similar? I mean, I would expect that a lot of the things would be similar, but were there also things that were a lot different in grieving those 2 different people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember it had to be like the first or second day after Michael died. I was about to say Jason. That's one thing I do. I confuse them. Sometimes I call
Yeah.
Michael Jason and Jason Michael. And I said, well, you guys should have stayed. It's not my fault. So, for instance, knowing what to expect, like I knew the death anniversaries would be hard. I knew birthdays would be hard. I knew that the second year of grief would probably be harder than the first year of grief. There are certain similarities in those things. I remember telling myself, well, I got through this the first time, I can get through it the second time. And I have found that to be true. And it also has been harder because it is the second time. It's like you're grieving two people at this literally at the same time. So I remember
It's
that.
cumulative, maybe.
Yeah, I remember that first. And the thing that made it really hard. So Michael died February 11th. I remember I was already nervous in the month of February just because I knew that Jason's death anniversary was about 2 weeks away. And so when Jason's death anniversary came, Michael had been dead for like 2 weeks or so. And I was just like, wow, so now I'm grieving Jason's death while freshly grieving Michael's death. And it just felt like life was unsurvivable.
Do you have you been able to take care of yourself? Because we know that death causes a lot of stress with our bodies and our minds. And you have such a lot in such a short amount of time. Are you okay, first of all? Okay, in quotes.
Mm-hmm.
And do you cognizantly take care of your health and try to lower your stress so that your body can have a chance to maybe not get an immunocompromised situation?
Of course. Yeah, that's a really great point. I know, yeah, my stress level went up tremendously. I remember like my hair was like, I have like really thick hair. I remember my hair was starting to fall out at some like early on. And I remember I went to the doctor and they like did tests and stuff. And they're like, wow, they were like, you before this, you were like the healthiest person I knew. Like I remember I had switched over and got new life insurance. I remember I even went to the doctor and they're like, your test came back perfect. Like they were like, I've never seen a person more healthy than you. Like this is really crazy. And then in a matter of like a few months after Michael died, they're like, we're kind of concerned. And it was just like a flip side. So it was just like the loss of him, the loss of health, the loss of normalcy, add the pandemic to it because Michael died like 2 months before the pandemic. So that was really crazy. What I tried to do was walk. That was helpful. Again, being a creative person, I play piano. Mel, I see the piano behind you. I played a lot of piano. I even bought myself a new instrument. Decided to play the harp. So
I was hoping for glockenspiel.
Okay, those are spendy instruments. Good job.
That would
Harps are not cheap.
No, they're not. They're not. They definitely aren't.
Like if you play the harp, you commit for a lifetime.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And
how's it going? Do you love it? Do you still do it?
I love it. So it's kind of a competition between piano and harp. I'm not sure which one I like best now. And I've been playing the piano since I was like 5. So, but yeah, I really love it. I told myself if I play any more instruments after this, it has to be small because pianos are big instruments and so are harps. So like, yeah, I need to learn how to downsize, but I use that as coping. And I really try to manage my stress by allowing people like, hey, I can't tolerate your crap like I used to. And if you need to vent, by all means do it. Just don't call my number. I was kind of like very more sassy or crass about things more than usual. I was really friendly. I remember one person was saying, you're not as nice of a person as you used to be. And I was like, well, I don't know if I'm not as nice or I just can't tolerate as much because, Michael died and Jason died too.
So this might be an unfair question because Michael died in 2020. It's 2022. But it feels like a huge leap of faith to get into another relationship after your person has died. And you've expressed that, you're worried about having that same hurt. Well, so now 2 people of yours have died. Do you foresee opening your heart up again? Or is that something where you're like, I can't do this again, so I can't open myself up? Have you thought through that? I guess you have because you're like super wise, but tell us about that.
Yeah, it's funny. That's the question that I get a lot. And it's actually funny that you asked it. So it's weird because I think it has like the widow. I always say that widows have their own language and vibe. Because if you weren't a widow, I'd be like, don't ask me that question. But you're a widow, and it doesn't bother me. I'm like, yeah, sure, ask all the questions.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's crossed my mind, and I can't really grasp it. Like I said, there's a lot of aspects of loss that I'm like, yeah, I can kind of put my mind around, or I've learned coping skills. But when I think about relationships, it's just like, oh, it just feels really exhausting. I think about when Michael and I were together, I still had pictures up of Jason. And I was like, does it bother you? And he was like, no, it doesn't bother me. And just, he never asked, but just, it was my thing. Like some of the pictures, I took them down, or I put them in like one part of a room, or just one in a little box or something. So this way, everywhere he turned, it wasn't like, hey, Jason, hi, Jason. Oh, it's Jason and Ashley again. Just so it would, kind of have that effect. And now I think like, oh my gosh, if I get in another relationship, I'm gonna be like, hey, new person, meet Jason, meet Michael. And it's just like,
yeah.
They're
like, what?
Wait, what?
They're like, am I gonna die now?
Yeah. So that aspect of it. Also, I'm close to both of their families. So I know Michael was really kind, and he actually had dinner with Michael's family I think when he had I don't know. I think it was like, I feel like it was early on in a relationship. He had met both his mom and his dad, and everything went well. And so now I'm like, okay, if I get another relationship, is this person gonna like meet Jason's parents and Michael's parent, or like how does that? I just feel like there's a lot of different aspects about it that makes it feel more complex and more exhausting. And
absolutely,
I'm exhausted for you.
Right. And one thing that I also think about often is I remember I really snapped at I don't remember what professional it was. I don't know if it was like a life insurance guy or a banker or something when I was switching accounts over. And they had asked me the question, but it was like really early on. Like, do you think you ever like try to have a family again or anything like that? And I was just like, well, most women tend to statistically outlive their husbands. I said, so the way I see my life set up, I got to get with a guy who's like super young, and maybe I won't be a widow for the third time.
Seriously?
Because I was like, even if I live until 80, like I still might be a widow for the third time. So that's one aspect I haven't thought about.
Okay, I have a plan for you. Don't even start dating anybody till you're 70.
There we go.
And then get a 30-year-old.
There we go.
A rich one, too.
A rich 30-year-old when you're good.
Yeah, you've expressed a lot of the issues that all widows face. How do you incorporate your person into your new relationship? How do you open up your heart? How do you... all of these things. And it's like, you've done it, you've got double that. So, I mean, my feeling and my sentiment has always been, I'm not actively seeking anything new, but I will never say never. But I don't know, like if I were you, I might be like, no, never. I'm saying never because like, this is too stupid and I seem to be cursed. So I'm not doing this again.
It's just like too much. It's too much for one body to be able to handle.
But also, I don't know. I don't know what life will bring.
Yeah, you also never know where your path is going to take you. So are you open to wherever life takes you? But just right now, you're like, too much. No, bye.
Yeah, right now, like when people are like, hey, what about a new relationship? I'm like, I frown upon that. I'm not really like as my nephew's 9, and if I ask him, does he like something, he goes, I'm not really fond of that. I'm like, at 9? I'm like, at 9, what? So yeah, I when people ask me, I'm like, I'm not really fond of that. But I believe in staying open. One thing that I have seen even prior to my loss, like I said, when I was working with a lot of doctors, oddly enough, I would come across a lot of widows. And sometimes people are like, oh, well, this will make you better, or you're better because of the death. And I've seen people who haven't, unfortunately, become better. They've become extremely sad. I've seen people where they turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms. I've seen where they've become really bitter people when they were just like the most loving person before. And so I say that I try to keep my heart open so I don't become like that. And so I always say that whatever the future holds, what will be, will be. But I'm not actively hopeful. I know when Jason first died, I even like months after he died, I knew that at some point my grief would mature to where I could be in another relationship. But now I'm like, even when it does mature, I don't know if I would want to engage in that and what that would look like.
You're super wise. I'm just like everything you're saying. I'm like, how does a 24-year-old know this kind of stuff?
I know. And
or maybe
are
I'm
you
just
now
dumb,
29.
Yeah, so actually my birthday's in 2 weeks.
Oh, happy birthday.
So thank you. Yes, I will be 30 on the May 30th.
So all of this has happened before you're 30. I'm
Right.
so mad for you. I
Seriously.
don't like that you've had this happen. I disapprove. I am not fond of this.
We're not fond of this. Yeah. So
Ashley, I want to just say to you that I agree with you. Whenever I tell people, muggles, non-grief people, that I'm a widow, or I explain that my husband is dead, the first thing, or one of the first things they always say is, oh, so are you remarried? Or, oh, are you dating? And I think it's so interesting that people go directly to that. But if another widow asks me, then I'm totally open to talk about it. But I get annoyed. I get annoyed sometimes when people, that's the first thing they do. Or maybe not annoyed, but I think it's a really interesting, like, peek into the brain of people who have not experienced grief. So Thank you for giving me some grace about asking about this topic.
Oh no, you're definitely welcome. I know also this is like, I don't know if you guys have experienced this. So this is a tidbit. Before, like I said, when I was working with a lot of doctors and stuff, I used to come and just working in like with medical insurance, I used to come across a lot of widows. So that piece did help me because just hearing widow stories, even though I wasn't necessarily a widow at that time, it kind of gave me some insight. But one thing that I've noticed now, being a widow, now I say I'm a 2-time veteran at this thing, is that I notice the people that have the most compassion, like, wow, that must be really hard, or I'm sorry that you didn't get a chance to build a family, or, going through this so young, or wow, you lost 2 people before 30, like, how does that even happen? I notice that they tend to be people who are in, at least outwardly appearing, of really good and strong, loving relationships. I noticed that couples who are a bit more rocky, or they seem like they're not as happy in their relationships, they're a bit more critical about how I'm moving or not moving on. And they are a bit more in the toxic positivity of like, yeah, just get another one, like just get another relationship. So I always find that interesting. I really started paying attention shortly after Michael died. And it has been almost consistent, and to the point where it became like a game. Like people would say nice things to me, and I was just asking them about their relationship. And I was like, I bet they really, really love their wife or their husband. And you could tell immediately, like, the love was there. And then when people would say things that weren't so sweet, I was like, I was like, so like you and your husband, you guys, like, what's the key to a good relationship? And one lady was just like, oh, we just don't see each other. We're working all the time. And I was like, oh, so that's why you tell me that it doesn't matter that, he's here and that I can move on quickly. So sometimes I feel like the advice that people give us, even though we don't like advice, is directly tied as a reflection of people's relationship and not necessarily just the widow or grief process.
You have the wisdom of an 80-year-old. I think you're already 80. In the best way possible.
Listen, this is what happens when you go through like widow life 2 times. I told you I'm a 2-time veteran, so I'm like a 29-year-old body, but like an 80-year-old mind.
I think you're a 4-star general at this point. Let's be honest. So Ashley, what have you now? You work with grief now, correct? With people that are going through things. What do you do now?
So right now I'm like actually transitioning. So I am still writing because, and I don't ever see myself stopping writing because I just love it so much. But I am actually a grief guide, which I like to call. It's different than a coach. A lot of times, I know even when I started out looking at coaches, they were looking at more of the reimagined life. like, hey, okay, now you're ready to date. Now you're, ready to see what life looks like after your person has died and maybe travel or whatever it is. But I was like, oh, I don't know if that feels good right now. And so as a grief guide, I really sit with people in the rubble of grief. Like, what do you do when you've made dinner and you look and you see that his presence is missing? Or what do you do when you wake up in the morning and you see the empty pillow, which I like to call the widow's first reminder that your person is gone? Or the moments where you go, I wish we did have kids, or maybe he's not here to see the grandchildren, or whatever it is that, comes with the widow's journey. I always say that it's not just that the person died, it's when they died and how they died and why they died and all the plans of like, hey, we lived a full life, it seemed, but we were going to retire together and now we can't live retirement. Now what? So I really help people sit in the rubble of grief, and we look at what the day-to-day and sometimes minute by minute life looks like and how they can cope with that, and also how they address the people who aren't so kind to them on their journey.
Listen, everybody, if you want a mentor who is super wise for it,
We have one for you.
go find Ashley. Where can they find you, Ashley?
So everything is at Learning About Grief, whether it's learningaboutgrief.com. On Twitter, because it's too long, it's Learn About Grief, and Instagram, it's also Learning About Grief.
Oh, man. That's so excellent. Thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing your story. I just feel ripped off for you, but I'm also so impressed with you. So, I mean, it's just like everything in grief. It's like so much duality. And I think that you're going to really make a difference in a lot of people's lives. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Anita. And thank you so much, Mel.
Yeah, we have learned much from you. So thank you. We do have a question, though.
Sure.
One last
It's
question.
an important question.
Okay, drum roll.
Okay.
Yeah, drum roll, please.
We'll see if your 4-star general 2-time veteran status holds up in this question. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right, Ashley. What is your favorite cheese?
Oh my gosh. I love cheese. Like, I am such a cheese person. Listen, if we have like 2 more hours, I could tell you cheese stories. Listen, I could. I really, really could. My favorite cheese, really. God, oh my gosh, my favorite cheese.
You can pick a top 4 if you need to.
Okay, so it depends because I'm weird. Like, sometimes for salads, I like goat cheese. I discovered goat cheese like 2 years ago in Vermont, and I feel like it's from heaven. And so it was really amazing. I found like this little spot in Vermont, and I was just like, you guys have the best cheese. And the lady's like, thanks, we put it on every salad. So I like that. I really like, you can't go wrong with a good mozzarella cheese. Gouda. And I want to say Parmesan, because I just feel like you could just decorate it with everything.
Good old trusty one, yes.
It's a trusty staple. It's the new salt.
All right, Ashley, you have passed the test. We are not throwing you off of the bridge.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it.
We'll keep you.
Thank you again, Ashley, for joining us today. We hope everybody listening has enjoyed this episode and can relate to some of the things that Ashley has talked about. I know I have been able to do that. Remember to check out the Widow Wives Club. It's on Facebook. And just side note, Ashley talked about how a lot of groups require an obituary or a death certificate with your name on it. And we do ask you to prove that you're a widow, but if you email us, we can always find a way to figure out that you belong in our group. And you do belong in our group if you're a grieving girlfriend or a grieving fiance. We're not exclusive to whether or not you had that piece of paper. But we just want to let you know that you are welcome in our group and that we can find a way to get you in there. That's on Facebook. It's private. It's the Widow Wives Club. If you want to keep the podcast going, check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
If you'd like to buy us tacos, go to buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonoww.
And until we talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
And I'm Ashley.
And we are just two young widows and an even younger 4-star general, 2-time veteran widow. And we are all just trying to figure out widow.
We
Do.
now.
This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.